apocalyptic scenarios like Russia and China entering the war directly, these sort of World War III scenarios. Those doomsday scenarios are still considered and worth discussing with people, because it does happen sometimes. It's more of the latter. It's an effort to assert control and prove the viability and the strategic, let's say, value of their position. All of these arrangements have been herky-jerky and last minute, sort of in a hurry, both by the United States and Iran, given this context in which both sides believe they won and both sides want a quick exit, but they don't want it in a way where they look like they're making concessions. One part of what's triggering, I think, some of these changes, let's say, on both sides, is that the other side doesn't appear to be conceding, to what their narrative says about their victory, their upper hand. And so they'll do these readjustments, in part for these tactical reasons, but I think more to make strategic points about what the strength of their position and the extent of their victory. And so, I expect this to be continue to be herky-jerky in the coming days and weeks and perhaps even months, as each side, let's say, jockeys for position and to prove the strength of their position. Ironically, both the United States and Iran want a big deal. They just want big deals that look very different from each other. And one of the reasons that the Trump administration continues to give about why it pulled out of the JCPOA is that it didn't include all of these other elements, whether getting Iran to stop supporting its proxies, which it will not do, or getting Iran to stop its ballistic missile production, which it will not do. But anything that gets a big deal that looks like a strategic win, including economically for the United States and for Iran, fits Trump's vision of what he wants. The problem is that he's not making the concessions that gets him what he wants. It was interesting in the last couple of days to hear the discussion about how Iran's economic situation might improve under the deal that's being negotiated, that the US is saying we're at the end of that negotiation and Iran is saying we're at the beginning of the negotiation. But whether they'd be unfreezing Iranian assets, or whether they would be giving sanctions relief, or this big toll in the Strait of Hurmuz, which was the previous idea, and now this idea of a big Iranian deal, it fits within the narrative of Donald Trump with all of his conflicts around the world, whether Venezuela or Greenland or whatever, in which, and Ukraine too, in which a big mineral deal somehow gets the US reinvested in the long-term solution of that country because it's seen as an economic carrot. Many scenarios could lead to that. By my count, 26 countries have been involved kinetically in this conflict, and another half dozen or so on intelligence sharing. So it already was very wide. A further widening would involve a widening of the target breadth and depth, including civilian infrastructure on both sides, which neither side wants for itself, but is willing to inflict on the other side to get what it wants. Really wide are the apocalyptic scenarios, like Russia and China entering the war directly, these sort of World War III scenarios, which are not completely impossible, although nobody seems to want them. But when you get into these vicious escalatory cycles, as we've seen in human history, wars can become what nobody wanted them to be originally, which is why those doomsday scenarios are still considered and worth discussing with people, because it does happen sometimes. The most likely escalatory scenario is that the continued jockeying and quibbling over the Strait of Hurmuz reignites the war, reignites the Lebanese war into a full-scale conflict, and the other 7 fronts of the Israel wars, in Gaza and the West Bank are back on fire in a much worse position than they are right now. And the next thing we start to see weapons we haven't seen before in certain cases, targets we haven't been seeing, but the targeting's been threatened, more troops and weapons coming to the region. I don't think anybody wants that except to some degree Israel. But again, you can always trip into a much more escalated war if you don't make the right de-escalatory moves.